hope you all had a nice Christmas. And for those of you that don't celebrate Christmas, thanks for all your messages. What can I say? So many great messages for the holidays and so on. And I wish you all well. I thought we'll start with the video before the new year. We have some really exciting things planned for, well, actually the next couple of weeks. But I thought I would cover the Enfield rifles, not the Lee Enfield. Actually, I don't talk enough about the Lee Enfield. Unbelievable rifle. But now I'm going to be talking about the P14, Enfield, and the M17, the 1917, the United States version of the P14. The P14 was in 303 British, and the 17 was in 30-06. And there are lots of videos which I watched just before filming. I have to actually refresh my memory. As you know, I'm primarily a collector, so a lot of times I probably paint with too broad strokes, and it's fun receiving your messages because you correct me, and I appreciate that. But I have the guns, and they're fantastic. And I went on Guns America right before filming to see if what I'm going to say now is true. And it's something I noticed at gun shows. It's something I've noticed for the past 2 years. And that is that the 1917 and 1914 Enfields are totally undervalued. The Sporters are. The military rifles, they're all about the same price, whether you're buying an Enfield or a Lee Enfield in original military configuration. But the Sporters, people right now say, oh, how terrible that everybody modified everything. Well, we're always modifying all kinds of rifles, even brand new rifles. We tend to modify. That's part of, I think, owning rifles, cars, houses, whatever. So this video is about the P14 and mainly the P7, the Model 17. Sorry, I keep scrambling the terminology. And we'll talk about the Springfield. We'll talk about a whole bunch of things that I hope you find interesting. And we may as well start with the Enfield. So what I did is I took them apart, which people seem to appreciate. And here we have a Springfield rifle. So the first thing I do is talk about something that I didn't mention. But the 1903 Springfield, a lot of you know this action. It's a fantastic action, and it's probably one of the most known and admired actions, and it is great. And there were different versions, and there were all kinds of, there's stuff that you can learn about heat treating and nickel steel and so on, double heat treating, but that's not the subject of the video, and that's very well covered in books, especially Hatcher's Notebook. But most people think of the Springfield as the rifle of the First World War, and from the letters that you've written me by various means, a lot of people seem to think that the Springfield was the main battle rifle in World War I and World War II for the United States. And this actually isn't quite accurate. Not that it matters all that much, but it's interesting. And we've covered these actions, and so I won't go into detail, but it's good to look at them disassembled. This particular action was reworked in Germany, and that's kind of neat on its own. And this rifle is chambered for this round, which you may not be familiar. This is the 10.75 Mauser cartridge. It's hard to find this ammo. You can see it's a massive cartridge. So this would be suitable for, African game, but it's actually suitable for anything. But that's on the Springfield action. So in other words, there's plenty of strength here, and I'm going to show you something else. I always have to make sure I go slow enough so that we can film properly. I'll put that forward so you can see what's what. Unique looking round, isn't it? And on the receiver ring, if you're a collector, and a lot of people buy and sell these Springfields, so there would normally be some kind of inscription on here, and it would say you know, where it was made and so on. This one has been cleaned. It does have some proof marks on it, which I won't bother trying to focus on. I'm assuming they're German proof marks, and there are more proof marks on the bottom of the action for the 10.75. But it was interesting to me that they took the Springfield action and made essentially an African rifle. And, you know, these days we go to Africa, and it's not part of our livelihood, but there was a period of time where going to Africa was a different matter. Anyway, nice express sights, good rifle. So 1903 Springfield, and everybody thought, well, the Springfield is going to carry everybody through the First World War and the Second World War. There were problems with heat treating, which you can read about, and for the Springfield. And it just became a matter of practicality to use the P14, the pattern 14 Enfield being a British entity, therefore Lee Enfield and so forth. So they had a pattern 14 and adapted to the 30-06 cartridge, which everybody knows can do just about everything that we need done with a cartridge, even though we are entertained by many other cartridges. And here's the Enfield action. And I learned a lot taking these actions, these rifles apart. So this is the Enfield on the right, and there's the Springfield on the left. And you can see these are, the Enfield is a bigger action. The one in my hand is a P14, and it's made in England. And we're going to talk about other Enfield actions, but many of you wrote me and said, why don't you tell people that the Springfield played a lesser role than the Enfield? And my answer was quite honest, mainly because I didn't know. So now I'm hoping to correct that. But you can see these are both extremely well-made actions. I'll close the bolt on the Enfield. Some interesting similarities in the machining. You can see that the Enfield is a longer action, and this action is extremely strong. To this day, the Enfield action, even though not many people talk about it, is used for custom rifles. I had a fellow from Australia, I can't remember where. Anyway, he was having a custom rifle made, and this is a massive action. It can accommodate cartridges that are really significant. In fact, a fellow I used to know in I forget which state had a 585 Nayati, and for those of you that don't know that cartridge, that's spelled N-Y-A-T-I, 585 Nayati, and he used an Enfield action. These actions take anything without a grunt. There's no issue with Enfield actions. That's partly why I made this video. Before filming, I went on Guns America, and I'm sure there are all kinds of other sites that have the same thing going on. And there was a beautiful Sporter, way better than any modern rifle, with some exceptions, for whatever it was, $350 or $450. And I'm reluctant to talk about prices because everything keeps changing. Thanks to our government's constantly printing money. But that's another matter. Anyway, this is a terrific action. So I thought maybe it's useful to see them taken down. People say work the bolt, so yeah, we can work the bolt. And the Springfield is, as good as when it was made. A fantastic, unbelievably fine rifle. And if you have not heard of Griffin and Howe and Sedgley and a few other makers, some of the finest rifles ever made were made based on the Springfield action. And it's the same holds true for the Enfield. I don't know why the Enfield doesn't capture the imagination. It does cock on closing, kind of like the Lee Enfield. So that means it's going to spring open, which I always thought was a good idea. Somebody sold me, I think I told you this before, a kit to convert this to cock on opening. And for those of you in remote areas and so on, or not remote areas, cock on closing means I am now compressing a spring by making this motion. So I've cocked the gun, now it can be fired. Other rifles, when you open them, well, we'll switch to the Springfield. So on this action, I have now cocked the spring that is effectively a striker, and when I can fire, and the bolt does not move when I open it because it has nothing to do with the spring pressure for the striker. Anyway, enough on that. I'll set those aside because it's a fantastic story. These Sporters, so we'll just go through these that I have on the table because they're so interesting. And like I said, I own a lot of guns and they sit in racks, and I'm not alone. I know I'm not alone because I receive a lot of letters, and collectors buy guns because they're interesting. Sometimes we give them away or, whatever. This one is 30-06. This is made by Churchill. Have a look at this rifle. I think it's a walnut stock. It's the military rifle in a Sporter stock, so there's no wood all over the place. And people say things like, why didn't they leave them original? Well, when you handle the original military rifle, it's a pretty heavy, clunky thing. In fact, I just had someone comment today, how did the soldiers handle these things? They're so heavy. Well, they did. And, maybe they could have been lighter. And I'm sure that the military has recognized that because the rifles we use now are much lighter than what we used back then. So a typical military bolt. This one, somebody did a great thing for sporting purposes and ground down the follower. You can't film this, but by grinding down the follower at the back, the bolt can open and close without a problem. The idea with a vertical block at the back of the follower was that a soldier who may have been bleeding and wounded and whatnot wouldn't close the bolt on a magazine that had no cartridges. So the follower was lowered. That made it possible to close the bolt. And it sounds like that's unreasonable, but of course, they study everything. These little milled out sections on the receiver, that's for a stripper clip. And most of the people these days have no idea what a stripper clip is, and I wish I had one. In fact, I wish I had an original 1917 or 1914 to show you, because the receiver has these big ears that come out of the rear of the receiver, but I don't right now. So I thought, rather than wait for that to happen, I'll just make a video with what I have on hand. Anyway, stripper clip, yeah, you just, the rounds are in a clip and you push them down into the magazine and you're loaded, and the holder, the stripper clip itself is just tossed away. Anyway, these are unbelievable actions. And then here I'll show you there are lots of these around. Unbelievable. Again, I don't know whether it's a P14 or a M17. You can always tell because they have this little bit of a pot-bellied design to them. In a Springfield, you can make a custom rifle that's smooth. You could do that here too, but you would have, pretty deep stock in the forend. And this, somebody went to the trouble of getting a laminated stock. I don't know who made this stock. It's actually a Boyd's stock. Boyd's does, great work. And it's in 308 Norma Magnum. And it's got I hope I pronounced this right, it's got a Packnor barrel. And see, it's still got the block in the follower. That's what I was telling you about. You can't push this forward. You'd have to mill out the back or just file down the back of the follower to close. So if I had a round in here, of course, it would be fine. And somebody put some decent, it's still caulk on close. .308 Norma Magnum, and the fellow that sold me this, the cost of this was minimal. I don't want to quote a price because I'm never quite sure. As usual, I'm a broken record. I wish that they put some iron sights on, but anyway, and some kind of a coating. One of the modern coatings doesn't look blue to me, but they seem to be durable. Everything else is perfectly suitable as a hunting rifle, and the stock is good. The pistol grip is good. All the dimensions are fine. So if you can pick up something like this, and I just saw a very interesting Enfield, because people don't seem to register Enfields. It's the strangest thing. For I think $350 or $400 in 9.3 by 338. That would be an interesting rifle to own. I may buy it after filming. 308 Norma Magnum, in case you didn't know it. Fantastically balanced Magnum cartridge. I always thought of it as better than the 300 Win Mag. But the 308 Norma from Sweden doesn't have the horsepower of marketing that the 300 Win Mag has. So it's kind of been sleeping. But people know about it, and this guy did. He made this custom rifle. I'll keep going so you don't fall asleep, but this is made by Churchill. Oh, what a fantastic rifle this is. Yeah, made in England. Terrific stock. I think they did something to get it to run smoother, and I noticed the trigger on this one is the trigger. These guys, it's got a 2-stage trigger, so you take up the slack, and then nice express sights, and then just at the right time. That's funny. Just at the right time. Yeah, that's a perfect rifle. So 30-06. Then what do we have here? Oh, I ended up with all these. People say, what's wrong with you? Auctions, people trading. It happens quickly. I'll sell them after filming. But this is a Remington. I'm going to show you the receiver ring, and I hope we can focus in on the receiver ring. If you get into the P14 or the P17 or the M17, there are different makers. They're all to specification, so there's really no advantage or disadvantage to any one of them. But this, not long ago, this would be probably a $200 rifle. You can see how flat the receiver is here. Somebody's gone to the trouble of milling off the ears and punch in either the 14 or the 17 on Google, and you'll see the ears sticking out. But for sporting purposes, people tended to take them off. Again, these are a steal. Just fantastic rifles. I haven't fired this one. Most of the time the bore is like new, excellent. And then the last one I'll show you is actually this is the one I'll probably keep. It's quite unique. It has British proof marks on the chamber just forward of the receiver ring. And these rifles, these Model 1917s, were made by Eddystone or Remington. Some were made by Winchester. They're all terrific Mauser variants. And I'll show you the receiver ring itself, if we can focus in on the receiver ring. And this one in particular is unique. Over here, it says not English made. So I'm assuming, this was part of a program of supplying weapons to the United Kingdom. And it has the remainder of the flaming bomb on the side of the receiver. And this would turn into a 2-hour movie, but on a lot of these, there's the flaming bomb, which is typical of guns from the United States. And actually at gun shows, you'll still find barrels, brand new barrels, in the grease, with the flaming bomb. I probably moved that too quickly. And you'll see these Sporters made with fantastic barrel band front sights. I think that's a Lyman front sight. And this one has a, it's a Lyman aperture sight. Oh, we shoot this. I took this up in the mountains. It's just a great rifle. And bore is like new. Everything on these rifles is steel, and you really own something when you buy one of these for whatever you pay. And like I said, I checked. What happens is I refer to the prices of rifles, and then people check, and then the prices are invariably higher because we have this what seems like uncontrolled inflation these days. But nevertheless, they're vastly undervalued because you're paying, $1,200 easily for a rifle that isn't even one half as good as any of these. Then a lot of people say, well, what happened before the Springfield and the Enfield? So I'll quickly show you. Before the Springfield, the US anyway used the Krag. One of my favorite actions, you'll wonder why. We can talk about that another time. This is not in 30-40, which would be the US cartridge. This one is in 6.5 by 55. Such a unique system for loading. It only has one locking lug, but it doesn't really matter. And this is some kind of a special model with it's a saddle ring carbine. There are people that study these kinds of things. And again, it's a cut down Sporter. But I don't know exactly how you think, but I see not much difference. So long as the action is there. I think the action is the important thing in a military collectible rifle. The original unaltered ones are interesting for sure, but this is the Krag that preceded the Springfield and the Enfield in the United States. And then, just in case you wonder what the original Springfield looked like, I wish I had an original Enfield. This is an original Springfield. So this is how it would have started out. This is a Remington, with the barrel bands and the full wood. And I'll show you the receiver ring. I don't know if we can focus in on that. But this would be what a authentic, original military collector would be after. And I know from, correspondence that people around the world where it's lawful to collect these kinds of rifles, they're after these. And yeah, I mean, this is one fine handling rifle, but there aren't that many that are, not modified. There are companies that restore these. I think I looked at a James River Armory. Maybe you know them better than I do. And James River turns out restored Springfields that just a beautiful job. They're re-Parkerized, just fantastic rifles. So I mean, there's a difference between looking at this and then looking at this, which is just the action out of the stock. Anyhow, I know that when I make these videos, you are all noticing things that I am not talking about. And that's actually one of the reasons I make these videos. And I invite you to always, first of all, correct me where I'm off, because like I said, I cover a lot of ground. I don't have the time. I have the interest, but I don't have the time to study all the details. But I always appreciate when people, tell me what's what. So yeah. And as far as the Enfields go, I don't think it's an unlimited supply, and I would be very surprised if these Enfields last. And I'll close off with one of my favorite rifles, which is this Remington Model 30. These were all over the place not that long ago, and yet it is based on the Enfield action, and it's a wonderfully stocked Sporter, no screw holes for scopes. Everything is steel and walnut. They added a decent rear sight, and I'm going to turn it around in a second. You can see they still have the stripper clip guides, even though most hunters don't use stripper clips unless they miss an awful lot. And I'll turn it around so you can film the receiver ring, which is here. And I wanted to show you some extra barrels, but anyway, we just don't have enough room or time. But if you ever come across one of these, after the war, Remington needed to have a sporting rifle, and so they thought, well, the Enfield action is perfect, and it is perfect. It extremely strong. I'll turn it so you can read the Remington on the receiver ring. 30-06 Springfield, 1906. And I think I showed this to you before. The bore is just spotless. Somebody owned it, and a lot of guns get stored. It's very hard to wear out, frankly, a barrel. Even when they look terrible, they usually shoot very well. So, and you can see the receiver is not milled flat because it never did have ears for the commercial version. And maybe they did something, or maybe somebody reworked this, but it's a very slick. Yeah, I mean, what a fantastic! You could hunt for a lifetime with this, and have plenty of value left over. Not a bad butt plate. I'm pretty sure I shot this a few rounds anyway. All right, well, I hope that does some kind of job covering these Enfields. I wish I had a P14 and a M1917, but I don't. But I have all these reworks, and I actually have a couple more. But all interesting. And somebody went to a lot of trouble with a lot of these. All right, well, I better sign off for now. And we're heading into New Year's, so thanks for taking the time to watch. I wish you all the best, as always. And we'll talk to you again very soon. Take care until then.